The power of cop blocking with large numbers of people. As one of the original cop blockers, badge number 5, I've been in the streets a lot over the years. I've helped save people from harassment by the police on countless occasions, informed thousands of young people about their rights, and have been arrested several times. There's no doubt that a couple of dedicated cop blockers can make an impact out there. I've seen that happen. However, have you ever hit the streets with a dozen people on your side? I'd bet you haven't. We just don't have enough people in most places to accomplish numbers like that. Police accountability activism in the streets is a risky place to be, so it's hard to find people who are willing to go out, even among vocal supporters. I have had the pleasure of being out with large groups, and let me tell you, it's a game changer, especially in New Hampshire, where there aren't a whole lot of police in most towns. Even in its biggest city of over 100,000 people, Manchester, the police DUI checkpoints have basically been shut down by groups of up to a few dozen people. The DUI checkpoint activists come out every time the police do a checkpoint, and the activists bring reflective signs, cameras, two-way radios, and set up at strategic locations to alert drivers to the existence of the checkpoint and encourage them to turn away. At a recent such event, there was a relatively small turnout of only about a dozen people, and they reported 90% success at getting cars who were going to turn into the checkpoint road to turn away from it instead. There was one arrest at the event, as a couple visiting keen cop blockers ventured away from the group to target the checkpoint directly with their cameras. Activist Christopher Wade was threatened and arrested as he crossed the street into the median. You can check out video of that here. What would have happened if there were a dozen people backing Chris up instead of just one? Manchester Police's Robert Harrington threatens, arrests think Penguins Chris Wade. As we learned in Keene, New Hampshire, the home of COPBLOCK, back in 2009, large numbers of activists can completely overwhelm the police, even inside their own department. Here's video of a crowd of people smoking pot in the lobby of the police station and the cops doing nothing about it. It was a response after the police arrested one of the organizers of mass smokeouts that were happening in the city common. Having good communication and dedicated activists is key. I've seen police leave their pullovers much faster than normal once a couple of cop blockers show up on scene. With a large number in the streets, you can effect multiple police stops simultaneously and really help innocent victims of police harassment in a much bigger way. Two-way radios and group messaging apps like Telegram and Riot are excellent ways to coordinate on the ground and in advance. However, for most of you reading this, having a dozen people out in the streets together is a mere fantasy. The reality is, you're toiling away alone or with very few allies, and it's been that way for years. If you could use some backup and you are of a libertarian mindset, you really need to make the move to New Hampshire, the place where both founders of COPBLOCK, Pete and Adamo, have called their home. New Hampshire has been the destination of a libertarian activist migration now for over a decade, many of whom are COPBLOCK supporters. If we who support police accountability can concentrate our activism in one state, we can have a much greater impact. We've already proven that in New Hampshire, but we still need more help. Numbers are a game changer. If we can outnumber the police at any given event, the tide will turn in our favor. Are you willing to step up? If so, check out the two current migrations of liberty activists to New Hampshire, the Free State Project and the Shire Society, and start planning your move ASAP. Let us know you're coming and get connected via the NH COPBLOCK group on Facebook or the Shire Forum. Here are 101 reasons you really should make the move to New Hampshire.
This film is protected under the Fair Use Doctrine.
No profits are made from it, and it's available to watch online for free. It was made not officially by the Free State Project, but by participants of the FSP for the sole purpose of reaching the worldwide liberty movement and getting as many people as possible to sign up and make the move. Please feel free to download, distribute, and show this film to as many people as you can. Thank you for watching.
after over 200 years of an experiment in freedom, the United States of America has wavered from its initial intent, culminating in an overtaxed and overregulated society. Even though it was designed to be a democratic republic, over time, the tendency has become to choose centralized control and bureaucracy over individual freedom and voluntary interaction. As a result of the social media boom, the spread of information has hastened, and many are waking up to the realization that the federal government has been thoroughly corrupted and clearly doesn't exist to protect the interests of the people. While the U.S. Congress has had an embarrassingly low approval rating, under 10%, many pro-liberty Americans have courageously tried to stand up to their overreaching power. However, very few have ever found success getting elected or effectively scaling back the size and scope of the government. And now, with the police state, the declining value of the dollar, arbitrary and unnecessary market interventions, unaccountable politicians, and the wars and their subsequent blowback, the feds march us towards oppression and the abandonment of civil liberties. With no apparent prospects for virgin land or truly free markets left on Earth, our world has become a bleak environment for the free-thinking individual. Fortunately, more can be done than simply awaiting the inevitable collapse into a totalitarian welfare warfare state. With the collaboration of concentrated numbers, groups of individuals can affect direct change in the economy, political process, and even the heart of society. Seeking to produce solutions to the problems we face, liberty lovers of all walks of life are migrating their families and businesses to a newly emerging frontier, New Hampshire.
In 2001, a PhD student at Yale University by the name of Jason Sorens published an article in the Libertarian Enterprise highlighting the failures that freedom-oriented candidates have had running for federal, state, and local offices. Outlining his ideas for a pro-liberty migration movement, he called for people with interest to respond. Later that year, the Free State Project was formed.
I was frustrated with the lack of political progress that libertarians had made. We have Nobel Prize-winning economists and famous philosophers, but even though our ideas have credibility and respect in academia, they weren't getting implemented. They weren't even getting a fair hearing in D.C.
It must have been around 2002. I was very involved with the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire. I was elected as the vice chair, and about the same time we were starting to hear about this thing called the Free State Project, and that New Hampshire was one of the states in the running. So I read about it. I started, meeting some of the people who were involved in it, and I decided that after doing some research that New Hampshire truly was going to be the best state for it. I went back to the Libertarian Party, and I said, well, I write resumes for a living. I'm going to write New Hampshire's resume. And as I started to do the research and I started to kind of gather the data, I realized that I had a whole lot more than that, and I ended up with 101 reasons to vote for New Hampshire.
After the Free State Project voted the Granite State as its destination, the list was renamed 101 Reasons to Move to New Hampshire, which has been displayed on the Free State Project's website for years. Frequently edited to keep up with the changing times, the resume was divided into 5 distinct factors to consider when choosing a place to live: government, politics, economics, geography and environment, and community and quality of life. Michelle Dumas's work has lived on, influencing thousands of people to make a commitment to liberty in their lifetime. This film will feature 101 of the reasons why New Hampshire is the right destination for you, your family, and your business.
As with any region occupied by a governing body, freedom of the individual is always under attack in some way, shape, or form. Luckily, there are already thousands of liberty-minded early movers and friends of the Free State Project already living in New Hampshire. Paving the way for the future of liberty, they are determined to hold state and local governments honest and accountable. While most state governments continue to legislate their constituents into a bureaucratic mess, New Hampshire remains one of the freest places to live in North America, touting a wide variety of historical political positions. Being taxed very little compared to most states, business owners and entrepreneurs in New Hampshire enjoy the prospects of operating without capital gains, inventory, or machinery taxes, passing the savings to the consumer.
Not having a capital gains tax is all part of not having an income tax. The government at the federal level is already taking a significant percentage of your income. Why give up an even greater percentage to the state? And the problem is all these states that have income taxes and capital gains taxes, they're going to just raise the rates. So to the extent that you can avoid any taxation of income, whether it's capital gains or just your wages, you want to do that. And of course, there are other states that actually have inheritance taxes. Here in Connecticut, we have one of the highest, if not the highest, inheritance tax in the country. New Hampshire has zero estate tax, and I think that's also important. And it's one of the reasons I got to get out of Connecticut. I can't afford to die in this state.
Even the right of a government to expropriate private property for another's private use, known as eminent domain, has been prohibited in New Hampshire. Yet another reason New Hampshire respects your private property more than most of the 49 other states.
In Indiana, my university decided to force an eminent domain case on a printing business called Hyatt Printing. My research showed that the school wanted to drive him out of business to get a monopoly on the printing. So I fought them using this information, and they immediately dropped the case. I'm glad that in New Hampshire, I'll never have to save another business because of the fact that that problem doesn't exist here.
Many of these great qualities are made possible by the fact that New Hampshire's legislature consists of 400 House representatives, each representing an average of 3,300 constituents of the total 1.3 million New Hampshire residents. While having some of the smallest, easiest to canvass voting districts and the best representation per capita of any state in the union, each elected representative is paid only $100 per year and is limited to serving a 2-year term per election cycle, reducing the perverse incentives for career politicians. All state budget requests must be approved by an executive council, abating the likeliness of fiscally irresponsible programs. Speaking of fiscal responsibility, in 2011, the state government slashed its annual budget by 11%, cutting roughly $1 billion. This is an example of why New Hampshire has one of the smallest, least intrusive bureaucracies in the country.
The process of trying to change laws within the system is a two-part process. You have a biennium, a 2-year legislative session where bills are introduced, they're considered, they get passed, they get rejected. At the end of that biennium, it's election season. All 400 representatives, all 24 senators, and the governor all have to face voters every 2 years. And the ones who have not been cooperative for 2 years, it's an opportunity to replace those people.
What separates New Hampshire from the other 49 states is that the vast majority of our legislators aren't lawyers. Every unsuccessful lawyer in every other state says, oh, I just can't do this real work thing. I'll run for politics. And they go and they get they run for politics and they win, because why wouldn't you elect a lawyer to write laws? Well, I can tell you why, because we have a lawyer industrial complex in this country, but not in New Hampshire. And that is an incredible distinction.
I can remember in my home state of Massachusetts, my grandmother having a problem and trying to reach out to elected officials and getting office staff and never getting an answer, or maybe 6 months you get a form letter. Hey, thanks for your attention, and oh, by the way, can you make a donation to my campaign? That's not New Hampshire.
All of those things make New Hampshire government extremely accountable to voters. Also town meeting. The fact that at the town level, you as a voter get a direct vote on the budget, and in most New Hampshire towns, the voters are extremely frugal, and they will scrutinize every line of that budget.
It gets to the point sometimes where they want to get at every line item, and they argue about 50 cents, and it's sort of laughable at times, but they do get involved, and you get to know the people in the town, and there's something really special about it. I was on the school board. I finished out that year of that other person's term, and after that I had to run, and nobody ran against me, and so I got elected. 1 vote would have gotten me in. Again, like a lot of people don't even want to take on these responsibilities, which means the opportunities are available. Anybody can do it if they want to.
Many believe that the Granite State's tradition of fiscal responsibility and respect for private property is a product of its rich history as an independent population. When the New Hampshire Constitution was written, it did not explicitly prohibit secession. Furthermore, Article 10 spells out the right of the people to alter, abolish, or establish a new state of government.
The idea, if you voluntarily get together, as in the 50 states voluntarily got together and formed the United States, you can voluntarily separate, right? Every 4th of July we're celebrating secession.
Because of the independent attitude of the Granite State's citizens and the presence of the Free State Project, politics in New Hampshire is quite different from other regions around the globe, boasting the tenacity of its constituents to wholeheartedly reject wasteful and irresponsible legislative efforts.
You know, the whole motto, live free or die, what it conjures up in your mind is there something worse than death? There are things that are far worse than death, and that is the inability to express your uniqueness, your gift, your talent, your love, your creativity, your innovation, your idea. Live free or die, I think, encapsulates that idea, and it's just a wonderful idea for our day.
From gun rights organizations to farm and garden clubs, New Hampshire residents are a proud, self-sufficient community of individuals seeking peace and prosperity. Economic and social freedom, the political lifeblood of Granite Staters and Free State Project participants alike, is exemplified in the culture, electoral races, and legislative victories across the state. This reputation and the success of the Free State Project has been recognized and endorsed by many prominent libertarian figures over the years.
Well, I guess a lot of you probably already know about the Free State Project, freestateproject.org, which involves having a lot of liberty people move to New Hampshire, so that with a critical mass of us there, the idea is, in the words of the Free State Project, we might be able to achieve liberty in our lifetime.
When you first hear about it, it's implausible, right? I mean, oh, everybody should just move to New Hampshire. Yeah, like that's going to happen. Well, wait a minute. It did happen, actually. So I came here 2 years ago for the first time, and I was amazed and embarrassed that I hadn't seen the power of this idea. And already 2 years ago, it was taking off.
What is your opinion on the Free State Project? Yeah, go Free State Project. Wow, what a model, what a terrific model. I wanted to see that happen in New Mexico. It's now happening in New Hampshire.
You know, I think the Free State Project is the most interesting, liberty-oriented movement of my lifetime. It harkens back to me all of the best elements of a kind of 60s utopianism of not even getting back to the farm or back to nature, but like of people creating intentional communities that are vast and varied and just relentlessly interesting.
Impacting the national debates, New Hampshire leverages its status as having the first in the nation primary. With the influence of many pro-freedom organizations like the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, the political scene has become very congenial to independent voters and much more likely for liberty-minded candidates to get elected into office. As a testament to the success of the political participants of the Free State Project, more than 20 Free Staters have been elected as members of the State House of Representatives, as both Democrats and Republicans. To support liberty-minded candidates, there are 2 voter guides that are growing in popularity, making it easy for voters to make their decisions. The New Hampshire Liberty Alliance's annual Liberty Rating Report Card is based on pro-liberty and anti-liberty votes on legislation in the House and Senate. Liberty Ballot identifies candidates who will reduce the size of government and allows voters to download a sample ballot from each voting precinct in New Hampshire with their recommendations.
We are a nonpartisan, all-volunteer, grassroots lobbying organization. So we'll look for candidates for open slots throughout the state that are individuals that are very pro-liberty. And we will help them, we train them to show them how to campaign, how to garner volunteers so that they can have the best chance of winning their election. To run a reasonable state rep campaign, it costs about $2,000 as opposed to some states where you're looking in the $40,000 range. We teach people how to review bills. We teach people how to testify at public hearings. A bill is most vulnerable in a public hearing, and here in the state of New Hampshire, unlike other states, every bill has a public hearing. The committee chair can't decide, well, I don't like this bill, I'm just going to toss it out the door. No one will never see the light of day. Here, every piece of legislation is heard in committee. It does have a public hearing, and it does have an opportunity to have its moment on the House floor.
Ever since early movers began pouring into New Hampshire for the Free State Project, a decentralized coalition of activists organically formed to take on various markets of untapped freedom. From the city revenue racket of parking meters and speed traps to the warrantless searches and seizures that occur on roadsides everywhere, activists have brought about a public discussion on the local and national media stages. Much of the activism that goes on in the Granite State has set in motion the collaboration of hundreds of activists and artists in an effort to spread the philosophy of liberty and capture the imagination of the freedom culture around the world. One such example to mention is the protest and exposure of suspicionless search and seizures by police forces. Police justify searching every vehicle passing through a checkpoint. With the interest of the individual at heart, activists take to the streets, armed with a high-powered laser, to warn motorists of the impending checkpoints.
The state of New Hampshire conducts a series of sobriety checkpoints, and those are funded by federal grants, which they're suspicionless checkpoints, right? So vehicles traveling through are pulled over, stopped, and searched without any actual probable cause of suspicion of committing a crime. So, in order to combat this egregious threat, there's been a very concerted activist effort to warn motorists away from these checkpoints and to educate the public on these abuses of power that are being carried out right in front of them.
I can project pretty much any message I want on any flat surface up to maybe just under a quarter of a mile away. We took the green beam downtown for a police checkpoint and warned the motorists that the police were on the bridge by projecting giant text on the side of a building that says police ahead or avoid police, or turn now, that sort of thing.
Even though New Hampshire is one of the freest places on earth, it still has a bureaucracy that makes a business out of going after victimless offenders. Peacefully combating this issue, many activists in New Hampshire regularly greet and inform jurors of their nullification rights as they walk into the courthouse. Notably, the Granite State is the only state to pass a law with such strong supportive language as, in all criminal proceedings, the court shall permit the defense to inform the jury of its right to judge the facts and the application of the law in relation to the facts in controversy.
Jury nullification is when the jury disregards the facts of the case because they conclude that the law is wrong.
That's right.
And
that's right.
One of the most famous uses of jury nullification was the Fugitive Slave Act before the Civil War. Northerners were being prosecuted for being stops on the Underground Railroad.
Right.
And their neighbors, none of whom believed in slavery either, would, regardless of what proof the prosecutors would bring to court, the neighbors would give them this and refuse to, and that nullified an unjust law.
Right.
And same thing happened during Prohibition. A lot of times people would get acquitted of bootlegging because, and you know, they always play it like people were all afraid of them. Well, some of them they were afraid of, and some of them they were just saying, I drink. I can't in good conscience convict somebody of selling liquor.
There was a case in New Hampshire where an individual had been growing marijuana plants on his own property. He was a piano tuner, he had a family, he was an older guy who was well known in the community, and he happened to be a Rastafarian, and he tried to defend himself using the jury nullification argument, and his attorney, Mark Sisti, convinced the jury that he should not in fact be convicted, even though there was no question about the facts of the case. He was in fact growing marijuana.
He grew pot, it's true, and the people who were on the jury knew it. They may have believed that he was totally guilty of the crime, and yet they acquitted him anyway in a thing that is called jury nullification.
So, you know, there's always that kind of like activism news, but this is big news any way you slice it.
New Hampshire has to be the liberty media capital of the world. There are radio shows, there are television programs, there's even a newspaper that's produced here, and as more people come in, there's more talent, you know, people that are creating things. I think is exciting because we really are building our own media here in New Hampshire.
What media is about really is having a conversation that, okay, this part of freedom, or you know, this part of our lives is going well, this part is not going so well. What are the experiments we can run to try and make stuff better? What can we learn from each other, both in a good way and a bad way?
You know, alternative media is a really interesting thing because 5-10 years ago it didn't really exist, certainly not to the extent that it does today. I'd actually use the terms old media versus new media, and new media I think has become incredibly powerful and it continues to grow exponentially. At some point we're going to see old media either conforming to new media or disappearing altogether.
In addition to the abundance of independent media, the mainstream media has been very receptive of the Free State Project and its participants.
In my experience, New Hampshireites do agree with almost everything we believe. The mainstream of New Hampshire is fairly libertarian.
In New Hampshire, you've got an atmosphere where you can make of yourself whatever you want to make of yourself. There's a very live free or die attitude here. The people here are very, very self-sufficient. They're very independent, but on the other hand, they're pretty easygoing, they're pretty easy to live with, and in general, I have found them to be very congenial.
The lack of seatbelt and motorcycle helmet laws for adults is a testament to the character of the people living in New Hampshire. Even before the Free State Project chose the Granite State as its destination, many New Hampshireites already had a strong sense of self-ownership and a good understanding of why the right to choose is so important. Demonstrating a truly live and let live society, same-sex marriage is legal and accepted by the overwhelming majority of the population. And from opting out of federal programs like the Obamacare state exchange requirement and the Real ID Act, to allowing raw milk sales to flourish in a relatively unregulated market, the live free or die culture is embedded in the state's culture.
You folks are the vanguard. You folks are the people who are leading this state to prevent national ID from creeping across America and New Hampshire. You're not alone. The National Governors Association opposes Real ID. The conservatives oppose it. The Cato Institute, one of the more conservative think tanks, came up to New Hampshire and testified last week at the Senate hearing on this bill in opposition. And guess what? The liberals oppose this. The ACLU came up from Washington, testified again before the Senate and said no to a national ID.
The national ID was something that got buried. What people don't understand, and I hope people will learn, is the NDAA bill that everybody talks about. It's actually how they fund all of the veterans services, the military services, military pay. But what they use it for is a baby to attach things and hide things in. And what they did in 2005 was they hid the Real ID Act into that bill. There was about 7 of us and said, we have to fight this thing. How do we do this? See, New Hampshire was chosen to be a pilot state. So what we had to fight was a $3 million carrot that the federal government was dangling over the state's head. And when the local media saw the international media picking up on our story, that started the national conversation. When we finally got the money out of the picture, that's when we won the battle.
One of the things that's interesting to me about New Hampshire is, they ban technology that is ultimately only there for bad purposes, such as license plate readers, automatic ticketing and stuff like that. Automation is great for many aspects of human life. It helps us get on with our lives, be more productive, more efficient. When it comes to stuff like that, license plate, we know that these are phony things that are used to control people or to generate income and revenue for police departments and for towns. So I think it's actually kind of interesting that New Hampshire is saying, no, you know what, we don't need that kind of stuff for those types of purposes.
Just as personal preferences are respected, the culture and the laws are representative of a state that would honor the right of the individual to defend him or herself.
We have a very gun-friendly culture here, so most people I know have some sort of concealed carry license or else they open carry. Everybody hunts and shoots and fishes and camps, so that's wonderful.
A unique way to celebrate Mother's Day for a group of moms, all members of the Second Amendment Sisters. The women gather once a month at the Wilson Hills Pistol Club. They consider shooting both a sport and a passion and say they couldn't imagine a better way to spend this special day.
It's very important in New Hampshire that we have the right to defend ourselves, and in the Second Amendment Sisters, it's very important to me that the basic human right to self-defense is recognized. And that means that every one of us has a right to choose to live. And if a criminal is trying to hurt us, the fact that New Hampshire has great gun laws, great knife laws, we have preemptive laws that prevent municipalities from stopping people from being able to defend themselves, that we live in one of the safest states in the entire nation, shows that an armed society is truly a polite society.
The Second Amendment Sisters is a national organization that believes everyone has a human right to self-defense.
Now that the Free State Project has been active for over a decade, participants are beginning to see success in a wide range of political spheres. Recently, the nanobrew industry opened up to more producers at a much more affordable cost. At 170 to 162, the New Hampshire House became the first legislative body in the U.S. to pass a recreational marijuana legalization bill. Unfortunately, it wasn't passed by the Senate. However, shortly thereafter, both the House and the Senate passed a medical marijuana bill for patients seeking relief from terminal illnesses.
Tonight, we're hearing a powerful hospital bed plea from a former congressional candidate to Governor Maggie Hassan.
As New Hampshire lawmakers seem poised to legalize a restricted medical marijuana bill, Hardy Mesha, who has been battling cancer for months, says this is a bill that doesn't go far enough. So he's taken to YouTube, urging for changes to help cancer patients like himself.
The last time a lot of us remember seeing Hardy Mesha, he was a Libertarian candidate for Congress. Back in October, he also told us he was waging a different type of campaign.
I just came down with Hodgkin's lymphoma, so I started chemo a week ago.
That was 7 months ago. This is Hardy Mesha now.
Turns out it's a little bit more difficult than I had even planned, so...
Despite his weakened condition, Mesha posted this video from a hospital bed, speaking directly to Governor Maggie Hassan, urging her, if not begging her, to reconsider her position against legalizing homegrown marijuana for the terminally ill.
To get to sleep at night, sometimes it's the only thing that'll put me out versus some of the harder drugs that they give me, like the oxycodone.
Governor Hassan does support legalizing medical marijuana, but only prescribed from a controlled, licensed facility. Such dispensaries, though, could take 2 years to get up and running and would do nothing to help patients like Hardy Mesha.
He doesn't have 2 or more years to wait for state-regulated legal access through an alternative treatment center. Patients like him can't afford to wait. They need protection now. In 2008, we actually convinced the House to pass a bill that would simply reduce the penalty for marijuana possession, make it a violation and a fine, which several states around us had done, so we didn't think it was that radical of an idea, but definitely the governor at the time thought it was pretty radical and the Senate thought it was pretty radical, and the Police Chiefs Association reacted as if we'd just completely legalized marijuana when we were just trying to reduce the penalty a little bit. But that got the discussion going. The House has now passed similar legislation a total of 5 times since 2008, and the Senate is just now coming around to where they're willing to start considering it.
I started the 420 Foundation and the 420 Rally as a way to reach out to pot smokers in New Hampshire and also to reach out to libertarians elsewhere in America and, you know, let them know that we're doing stuff here. I just started going out on the square every day and smoking a joint with a couple of friends, and we started telling our friends, well, anytime you want to get high at 420, come on by the square, we'll smoke you out. As time went on, we got up to where we had 30 people in there, and a reporter from the union leader just happened to be wandering by the square while we're out there smoking, and she decided on the spot that she was going to write us into her article, which meant a couple of things. A, we were going to have a big police presence, and B, we were probably going to have an uptick in attendees, and that did happen. We had 150 people out the afternoon that the story broke, and this is in a town of 35,000. So basically the outcome of the 420 rally was that the Keenetown Square became basically a demilitarized zone for a couple of years in the war on drugs. We had very little police presence out there. We used to have nightcaps where we'd be out there drinking beer and smoking joints, waving at the cops as they drove by and say, "Come on, have a beer with us," and they wouldn't come. They just wouldn't come because they were so sick of going out there and having people not be afraid of them. It drives them crazy.
As you probably know, such a freedom-oriented culture is only sustainable if the population is well educated in the realm of economics, and New Hampshire leads the pack at #1. The people's economic understanding has led to the citizen legislature maintaining a freer market in more industries than most states in the Union. It's no wonder New Hampshire has the lowest poverty rate and one of the lowest tax burdens in the nation. New Hampshire also claims the #1 spot for the highest rate of disposable income per capita and the highest median household income at $71,322. The prosperity of the Granite State has afforded New Hampshireites the money and time to produce, buy, sell, and trade in a diverse market of natural food products and other local goods. New Hampshire has a third least subsidized farmers who join amateur growers, setting up farmers markets, home vegetable stands, and forming co-op groups and meetups. Along with all the varied economic activity, alternative currencies like gold, silver, and barter for goods and services are actively traded on a peer-to-peer market in New Hampshire. An even bigger impact, the Granite State has been taken by storm by the Bitcoin community.
Basically, any transaction I want to do, I can just do instantly from peer-to-peer, anytime, any place. I remember when Bitcoin was still just a tool for nerds. In the beginning, it was just part of this agorist underground market community. And if I wanted to use it outside, I'd have to just change it into what people call real money. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now, even when I'm traveling, wherever I am, I can find places of using it.
I love the fact that we can just trade or barter and use whatever payment methods are happen to be convenient at the moment. If you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to do things on your own, make something, provide a product or service, whether it's big or small, you can find somebody in the Free State Project who is going to want it, and you can make a trade for it.
Alternative currencies are a very big topic here in New Hampshire among the activists. The big elephant in the room right now is Bitcoin, of course, but before that there was silver and gold, because if something else comes along, I mean, silver and gold was the thing back then, and no one could conceive of anything better. Who knows, in a few years something might supplant Bitcoin.
New Hampshire is already one of, if not the Bitcoin capital of the world, is certainly one of them. We have many of the early Bitcoin entrepreneurs, and that's just a function of the fact that in our new mover community, there's a tremendous overlap with interest in Bitcoin and alternative currencies.
I believe they're used quite significantly in New Hampshire, especially in our community, and that allows us to create a network effect that the more people use alternative currencies, the more useful they become. If you want to have an appropriate amount of voice that you should be allotted in this world, I believe you can't be using a currency that siphons off your work, your wealth, to a central organization, whatever that central organization is. Usually today, most currencies siphon off that wealth to governments and central banks.
So I think these alternatives are going to present themselves, and I was glad to see that Dr. Paul popularized the idea that legal tender laws are what the problem is. There needs to be competition in everything, including the money. And by people just understanding that, once they got over that hurdle, then you showed them a technical way that they could do it, and they showed the market for it.
Offering 5 free trade zones, low taxes, and a political friendliness towards entrepreneurs and small businesses, the New Hampshire economy serves as a prime example to the rest of the nation on how to step back and allow markets to flourish, culminating in a diverse job market. This contributes to an unemployment level far below that of the national average, which includes Portsmouth having one of the lowest unemployment rates in the U.S.
I found New Hampshire's job market to be one of the more robust ones I've seen around. It seems people who move here tend to get the job really quickly. The second day, 2 days after I arrived, I got a job.
One thing that I've witnessed in this community in a very short amount of time is the amount of agorism that takes place. Gourmet delivery food, to taxi services, to handyman work, to you name it. There's people going into business without seeking permission to do so. And it's, to me, agorism is the fundamental tool used to build, our free society that we really want to build. We can always talk the talk as much as we want, but the agorists in the community, those are the ones really walking the walk.
The way new ideas come to the marketplace is not with great big full-blown large businesses. They develop embryonically.
An Austrian economist named Joseph Schumpeter spoke of capitalism as creative destruction. It was like a garden that's getting turned over, and what's left out of that is the creation is really going on in this country at the level of the small business. That's where the innovation is. Big business and government are the destructive part of creative destruction. I mean that literally. Businesses grow either until they get big enough to be ossified and bureaucratic and frozen themselves, or they get acquired by big business. But eventually they become big business, and when they do, they're not adding new jobs. Look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. The majority of it is that is disproportionately small business.
I salute any environment that unshackles innovation and creativity from industrial scale compliance and protocols to allow a very fertile germination tray for the disturbance of lots of different kinds of seeds and plants and ideas to germinate. It's a great environment.
A fertile business climate is part of what's known by many New Englanders as the New Hampshire advantage, drawing attention to the Granite State's considerably low sin taxes and lack of sales and income taxes. And with Manchester being the second most tax-friendly city in the nation, residents from surrounding states pour into New Hampshire to take advantage of the savings.
The New Hampshire advantage is something that's viscerally known to all our neighbors. We've got people coming up from Massachusetts, down from Maine to do their shopping, to buy certain goods and services that are prohibited in their states. There's even been discussion from time to time of posting warning signs along the border that as you cross, you're going to be losing certain freedoms, you're going to be paying new taxes. So it's known. I think our neighbors sometimes just view it as a curiosity, but the takeaway for us is, yeah, you know, if you want this to be your place where you can sneak around and buy your cheap liquor and shoot your firearms and be a Liberty tourism destination, we welcome it and we benefit from it. It brings jobs, it brings wealth into the state. New Hampshire chose freedom, and it is now the wealthy state among its neighbors, which is almost like a microcosm of what happened with America and people moving from Europe. We chose freedom, and this is where the opportunity was, where anyone could come here and make a life for yourself.
Because the Granite State is such a prosperous region, you may think that the cost of living would be unaffordable. But according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, New Hampshire ranks #1 in both affordable and available housing options. Without an auto insurance mandate, the market is open for competition, incentivizing insurance companies in the Granite State to offer some of the most affordable coverage plans in the nation. This is partly why Forbes called New Hampshire the most affordable state to own and operate a vehicle.
Let's set aside for a moment the economic opportunities, the independent, voter-driven political sphere, and the small government. New Hampshire is absolutely gorgeous year-round, and it's perfectly placed for outreach, activism, social events, and outdoor activities with 18 miles of beaches and coastline, an international border with Canada, and even a close proximity to the major metropolitan city of Boston. Because of the state's location and geography, New Hampshire residents have historically experienced a very low risk for earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, and other natural disasters. And the distinctive seasonal changes draw in skiers and snowboarders in the winter, leaf peepers in the fall, and people from all over the world for New Hampshire's spring and summer festivals and outdoor venues.
The constant change is really awesome. I thought coming from a city to a place that was going to be so rural would be boring. People were joking back home that, you know, they were like, what, are you going to take up bird watching? And yeah, I kind of did, and it's way more exciting than I thought the country would be, and I really feel a lot more satisfied here than I thought I would. And the winter's not that bad.
I moved from Florida, so it was an outdoor sauna every day that that I stepped out. I love the actual existence of seasons up here, and I take full advantage of it.
And it's gorgeous. Oh my God, it's beautiful. There is never an ugly moment at this. It's absolutely, I live on a postcard.
New Hampshire has it all, really. Where I live now in the seacoast area, I'm like 15 minutes from the beach, and I can go and drive 40 minutes and be at a huge lake, and I can drive an hour and be right in the heart of the mountains. And we boat and we snowmobile and we ski, and I don't go to the beach that often, but it's there if I want to. There's something for everybody.
I love skiing and hiking and hunting. So we've got moose, deer, foxes, coyotes, all that good stuff.
The Granite State is a hiker's dream, featuring Mount Monadnock, the most hiked mountain in the Western Hemisphere, and Mount Washington, the highest peak in the northeastern United States. The lakes, rivers, and the fresh air, abundant potable water resources, and the seemingly endless views from New Hampshire's highest points have drawn visitors in from all over the world.
We do have a deep water port that opens us up to international trade. We have port facilities and a maritime history that give us certain advantages over other locales. It's really the pro-trade attitude combined with the geographic good fortune of the seacoast that has kept it being a fairly prosperous region since the colonial times.
Compared on a scale with the rest of the United States and also the rest of the world, New Hampshire is a small place, which is a good thing. The largest city is about 100,000 people. And it gives one the sense that they can be effective at whatever it is that they might do here. And I believe that that's important. It's important to feel that one is not overwhelmed by the trappings of a megalopolis like, you know, in New York, or Chicago, and LA. In New Hampshire, if you want to be effective at what you're doing, you can be.
You know, before the state vote, there was a big debate about, you know, which state should we come to, and Wyoming was kind of a leading contender among the western states. I liked Idaho. But one of the things about New Hampshire that was pointed out was it's kind of small. Some people saw that as a disadvantage. And now that I've lived here for 10 years, I can say with confidence it's actually a huge advantage because we see each other on a regular basis and you don't have to drive a long way to do that. Now there are, you know, cities in every state in America, so if you lived in one of those you might see each other, but the people way across the state are 6 or 8 or 10 hours driving time away, whereas here, for most of the state, it's an hour or 2. That's a big difference, and it enables us to get together on a much more regular basis.
Even before the Free State Project set its sights on the beautiful mountainscape of New Hampshire, there existed a unique and unmatchable quality of life. USA Today recognized this in an October 2014 article titled "The 10 States with the Best Quality of Life," rating the Granite State #1. Along with an extensive wireless infrastructure, New Hampshire ranks #1 for the highest percentage of households that have access to broadband internet. Traveling in the Granite State is a breeze, connecting family, friends, and colleagues. New Hampshire highways have the 3rd lowest fatality rates, which is complemented by 118 registered airports within its borders. Additionally, New Hampshire is a great place to raise a family, ranking 2nd in the nation for exceptional healthcare coverage and 5th overall for healthiest residents.
Right now we have local eggs, which is a pretty big seller. They almost always sell out. And so local chicken and duck eggs, goose, there's grass-fed ground beef. We have contracts, wholesale contracts with some local farms, and they are all beyond organic, no chemicals ever used, completely chemical-free.
I think this is powerful stuff. My family, we raise much of our own food. I have pigs at my house, and I find them, you know, fun and easy to raise. It's good for my kid. My wife has a large and productive garden.
Sporting numerous gun clubs and shooting ranges, New Hampshire is a shall-issue concealed carry state and requires no permit or fee to open carry. So, with high numbers in gun ownership, naturally the Granite State sets the bar for the rest of the country with the lowest homicide rate. As writer, activist, and mother Jen Coffey stated earlier in this presentation, an armed society is a polite society.
It was very important to me that New Hampshire was a very safe state before I moved. And it's still important to me today as I live in New Hampshire. One thing that really struck me is I did actually look at the numbers, and the murder rate here was 1/3 Indiana or Kentucky, the 2 places I've lived. Being a person that's not really a gun person, I don't really enjoy shooting. It was nice to know that the data was supporting the premise that if you have more firearms around, you generally have less murders and less crime.
New Hampshire's free spirit and friendliness toward the entrepreneur make it possible for consumers to find many small and unique family-owned enterprises, as well as most national chain stores, all within short driving distances. According to USA Today, the Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion at Meadowbrook, which hosts big-name musical acts from all over the world, has made it into the top 10 concert venues in the country, right alongside the Greek Theater, Fenway Park, and Madison Square Garden. There's no shortage of fun in New Hampshire, as the Free State boasts many fun attractions, including comedy clubs, Canopy Lake Amusement Park, indoor rock climbing, indoor surfing, indoor skydiving, NASCAR, many water parks, and Fun Spot, the largest arcade in the world. In addition to these family-friendly qualities, New Hampshire residents take pride in numerous available educational opportunities.
New Hampshire is very family-friendly, and that's important to me personally. I have 4 kids, so we got 2 that are technically school age, but actually they really all are. School starts at birth, or education really starts at birth. New Hampshire's homeschool laws have been deregulated since we've moved here, significantly because of Free State Project participants, actually.
My son has never been in the government indoctrination centers at all. He knows nothing of it. And I love it that way. So we educate him in the way that is best for him.
There's just a network built in of parents who are already doing that, so it's easier for you to get plugged in if you came here. And I think that's really important because one of the chief ways that the state keeps the system up and running is just every time the next generation comes up, they go through their procedures and they learn all the state-approved history and so forth. And so it's our job now as people in the liberty movement to sort of deprogram everybody and say, no, this is really what the truth is. And so if you're starting with kids and they don't have to learn all that bogus history and the way they classify the world, and they're learning things correctly on the front end, that just makes it a lot easier and it's more spontaneous and natural for them. And also, learning is fun. It's an adventure, and the government-run schools really do a great job of making you think it's a chore.
My son got into a top echelon university coming out of actually a public school here, which was not bad. We don't have a lot of the public school problems you have in other parts of the country. We interacted with the teachers, and like they weren't kicked out of school for having a folder or a book cover that had a picture of a gun on it or something, evil things like that.
Education is highly valued in New Hampshire. According to the Cato Institute, the state grants tax credits to corporations worth 85% of their donations to nonprofit scholarship organizations that help low and middle income parents send their children to the schools of their choice.
Well, I was trying to find scholarship opportunities for my twins. This was their senior year, and wanted to be able to keep them in the school that they were currently attending. As a result of some financial setbacks, that was not going to be possible.
Families make choices every day, right? From the food that they buy at the grocery store, to the car that they buy, to their children's preschool and college. I think families should have that same choice in K through 12 education as well. A family can use the scholarship at a public school outside of their district, or a private school, or for homeschooling. And really, ultimately, that's to empower them so that they're making the choices in their children's education and not constrained or trapped by their zip code.
As reported by the Annie E. Kasey Foundation, the Granite State ranks #1 overall for child well-being. After a decade of growth, Free State Project participants and local communities are stronger and better connected than ever. Along with conventional communication methods, a set of rapid message distribution networks known as Porcupine 411, or Pork 411 for short, is widely used to notify subscribers of events, social gatherings, and urgent news. Mutual aid is very important to Free Staters. Hundreds of nonprofit organizations, like the highly successful Free Stater-founded Shire Sharing, offer a helping hand to those in need, without resorting to government redistribution of wealth programs.
So I moved to New Hampshire in 2009, and a little more than a year later, my dad, Kent Bolden, living in Texas, so my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and I don't know why I'm crying. Sorry. When he was alive, he was a hardworking, entrepreneurial, capitalist, opportunist man, and gained a lot in his life. And he always wanted to give something back to other people who didn't have as much as he had. About 10 years before he died, he started doing an annual, what he called the Basket Brigade. And he would rope all his friends and co-workers and employees into helping him deliver bags full of food to the doors of people who didn't have their own Thanksgiving dinners. He started out only delivering one basket. His first year, he and my stepmom made the delivery themselves. And then by the time he passed away, the last Thanksgiving that he organized, they delivered food to about 200 families in Dallas. They just knock on doors and leave the food, and if people didn't answer, they just leave the food outside. They never needed a thank you or to explain who they were. They just said Happy Thanksgiving and walked away. And after he passed away, I was really searching for a way to stay connected to him, because it was very unexpected. He was only 60. So it got close to Thanksgiving. I realized that no one would be doing the Basket Brigade in his absence in Dallas. I started pondering maybe doing it in New Hampshire, and I wasn't sure how much support it would get. And I talked to a couple of close friends about it and got a huge response. Everyone thought it was a great idea. We put a little money together, and in the first year, I think we fed 52 families, and that was a rush. We rented a small bus, packed all the food into the back, and went to the homes of some people that I was connected to through a couple of private charities in New Hampshire. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, which is the day my dad always did it, so people have time to defrost their turkeys. There were maybe 15 volunteers there, and we loaded the food into the bus and went out, and it was messy, but we did it. We've done more than my dad ever did, and he built that up over 10 years and only reached out to maybe 200 families toward the end of it on an annual basis. And in our third year, we're over 300 families. I don't know what we're going to do next year, because there's just so many people willing to volunteer their time, so many people willing to donate money and help me get this accomplished. I think it's grown so big that it's going to take an army to get all that food delivered. When I help someone, it's a selfish act because it makes me feel good, and I feel good that they feel better. I'm proud of myself when I do it, so I receive something when I help someone else out, and that's, I think, why charity can still be part of a free society, a society that doesn't involve coercion, because it's so rewarding. And I think that that's because it's purely emotional for everyone.
Every year, the Free State Project officially hosts 2 major Liberty-themed events, inviting Liberty lovers from all over the globe to attend DIY classes, live musical acts, panel discussions, and keynote speeches from prominent figures and celebritarians like Ron Paul, Tom Woods, Judge Napolitano, and John Stossel, just to name a few. During the summer months, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, a week-long family-friendly outdoor festival, is held in the northern White Mountain region. And for the winter months, Liberty Forum is a formal conference scene hosted in downtown Manchester, the state's largest and most active city. Newly added to the long list of Liberty events are the 2 annual fall conferences, the Free Coast Festival and Keenvention.
PorcFest is the short nickname for the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It's an annual event held in New Hampshire. I've been to a lot of libertarian conferences where we academically discuss what a free society would look like down the road in the future. Hypothetically, at PorcFest, you see it.
I brought my son with me when I went to PorcFest. It was very family friendly. He enjoyed it thoroughly.
There's so many things that I really loved about PorcFest. The beat vibe, the fact that it's rural, the discovery, much to my delight, of a genuine anarcho-hippie crunchy community.
This is my first PorcFest and I am totally knocked out. I mean, it's an incredible vibe that is simultaneously laid back and high energy, a raft of interesting people. Everybody is polite and engaged, and there's just fantastic conversation going on. And I know just wandering around talking to people, looking at stuff that they're selling and listening to the speakers, I've learned more in the last 3 days than I probably have in the last 3 years about what freedom means in an applied format.
So I wasn't sure what to expect with Liberty Forum. This is my first Liberty Forum. I've been telling people over the past, because I get messages from people all the time, like, I'm thinking about making the move, how do I do this and that? And I'm always telling them, I think that the best advice I can give you is just to come here and meet people, because I can try to point you in the direction of like job boards and message boards or whatever, but you could just come here and like meet your next employer, or come here and meet your next, landlord or whatever.
The idea is to show off New Hampshire, but we want people to come here and see New Hampshire during the winter and realize that, hey, it's not so bad. A little snow, we can plow it out of the way, and if you keep the fires of liberty burning, it'll keep you warm.
So I went to Liberty Forum this last February, and it was fantastic. I got to hang out with people like Jeffrey Tucker and Davi Barker of ShinyBadges.com. These are these people that are creating the free world, and I'm rubbing elbows with them.
I am so much in support of the Free State Project. I'm so much in support of what is happening here in New Hampshire, because it's not just about New Hampshire. It's about demonstrating to the entire country the power of bringing these ideas into not just the marketplace, but into state houses, into local communities and county commissions, and they are fighting to restore their own liberty. They're not waiting for a savior. They're not waiting for some messiah to come along and be their answer. They are the answer. What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is, right? Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of pontificating. There's a lot of people thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it, and that's why it's so exciting.
These people, along with thousands of others just like them, have signed the Free State Project's Statement of Intent. They made the move, have gotten active, and joined the existing Live Free or Die community. Of course, the Granite State is not perfect, and we have a long way to go in recovering certain liberties, but we invite you to join us in making history, showing the world the universal benefits of freedom.
I moved from California, Orange County, California, and while there is a liberty movement there, I felt like I was the only person planning liberty events, and I was working so hard for so little payoff. And I moved here, and I've only been here about 2 weeks, but I've been to an event every day that I've been here.
It was really something else to land and be instantly plugged into a community that in other places I'd lived, I had taken years to build up that kind of network of friends and colleagues. And here I was, I just showed up, and within days I was already plugged into a huge network of people who to this day remain some of my best friends and business colleagues.
One of the things in life is you have to take risk to get results, and fear is a very paralyzing force. Unless you actually try things, you're not going to have results in your life. So I think that people should take a risk on something, and the Free State Project is still a project. It's not a proven thing. Even if we don't achieve more freedom in my lifetime, I mean, it's still awesome to be around all these great, positive people. You know, that's the reason I'm here, is for the people.
That's the thing. That's the key to all of this. Everything we have here that's great and wonderful can be even better. All it's going to take is for more people to show up.
Working alongside our many New Hampshire native friends, we are consolidating the efforts of 20,000 liberty-minded activists in a small, low-populated state with an active pro-freedom culture. We've built an amazingly energetic and supportive community that enjoys having fun in many different ways. So of course, porcupines love a good move-in party. We'll help you get settled in and familiar with the region so you can hit the ground running.
When I first moved here, I did it alone. I wasn't involved in Facebook yet, so I didn't have the FSP welcome wagon, I didn't have the job boards or anything. But I found the environment of New Hampshire very welcoming. I was able to get a place to live the day I got here, easily, and it's been a wonderful experience helping other people to move in and making them feel welcome, because I know how it feels to move 1,000 miles and be someplace completely new, and they really appreciate it.
We're on our way up to West Lebanon to welcome Jason and Mary Sorens, and finally moving to New Hampshire.
We moved to New Hampshire in August 2013. We had about 60 people show up to our move and moved everything out of the moving truck and into our apartment over the space of about 20 minutes. Then they held a party. There was a guy doing balloon animals for the kids, and people brought food, and it was great. I couldn't even meet everyone who came to the party, but it was fantastic.
We invite you to be part of this historic movement. Please visit freestateproject.org/join, sign up, and ask your friends and family to be an active participant in achieving liberty in our lifetime. Thank you for watching.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheep up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if some, if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head, help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.